Listen up, leaders. Today's topic is all about your behavior matters. Listen, we are diving back into the great work of Stephen Covey in this book, The Speed of Trust, which you know I love, love, love this book. I think as a leader, if you haven't read it, this is something that you need to add to your development plan, right? Understanding what's involved in forming trustful relationships and getting to a place where you can connect with your people, where you can create the conditions where, in the end of the day, they trust you. And that trust is learned from the way you lead. Your team members will see that in you. And listen, you know this, you will always hear me tell you this. As a leader, you need to lead from a place of authenticity. That is so incredibly important. And leaders fall into a lot of traps when it comes to authenticity because you know what they try to do. They're trying to lead like somebody else, like their boss's boss. And you know people can spot phony a mile away. So if you're trying to lead as somebody else that isn't who you are, then guess what happens? There is no chance of you forming trustful relationships because people don't trust you. And has everything to do with your day-to-day behaviors. And I will tell you, you need people to trust you because you need people to follow you. You need to be that type of leader that can influence people, that can get people moving in the direction you want them to move, even despite the day-to-day challenges. That is where exemplary leadership comes through. And again, it all starts with trust. So if you're not willing to kind of go from that place, that's what we all have to do. So you will always hear me say this as an educator. When it comes to leadership, it is our duty and our responsibility here in life school as leaders to support the people that we care for. And I will tell you, it was a pivotal time in my life when I had a mentor that told me, you failed to support your team. When you were in all of those meetings, when you were not checking in on them, when you were not showing oversight, going behind them, that is our duty and responsibility. We must check in on people. It's the way we show that they are valued. It's a way of showing respect. It's a way of showing that we care for them. And why do we do that? If you're sitting there shaking your head thinking, I don't want to be in that woo-woo kind of leadership, I'm going to remind you, you care for people. You lead people who care for people. And if you don't care about them, then how in the world do you think they're going to turn around and model any other behavior? So that's where you start, right? I always feel like it, makes me think of that Seinfeld episode. I'm like a huge Seinfeld fan. My husband and I, we are huge Seinfeld fans. And I love the episode with George Costanza called The Comeback. I absolutely love, love, love it. And if you are a Seinfeld fan, you will totally get it. The whole purpose of that episode was George really had to come back with a good comeback to zing another leader who offended him. And he decided to get on a plane and he decided to meet this leader at a new place simply to provoke him to respond in a way by saying, the jerk store called and they're running out of you. And it makes me laugh every time because, of course, the leader says to him, right, well, you're their all-time best-time seller, right? And when it comes to leadership, we have to think about this, right? This is how people form opinions, right? They look at us and they say, is this a compassionate, caring, kind leader, someone who's interested in me, shows empathy, shows that they're interested, are genuine, or is this person just a complete jerk and could care less about whether I'm here or even says things to me, which I've heard people say this in healthcare. Sometimes to me, it's incredibly shocking to even say these words, but we do have leaders out there that believe that it's okay to say, if you don't like it, there's the door. I mean, these are our people that are wired to care. They take care of people. If there's a problem, if something's getting in the way, that's our responsibility. That's where leaders come into play. It means we have to work, slow down, not get defensive, but we have to come from a place of curiosity, and we have to come from a place where we are actually interested in helping to support that person. We're actually interested in making sure that we're choosing the right words and that we're making sure that we're role modeling the right behaviors every single time. And one of those behaviors is really about motivating and inspiring people to continue to come back the next day despite every single thing that they experience. So I'll tell you, it reminds me of that time, again, when I failed as a leader, when I had that mentor say to me at a very critical point in my career, you failed your team because you weren't there. That's your job, right? In the end of the day, I'm not saying that you don't have to attend meetings and you have to manage projects and you have to do all these things. But leadership is about making sure you're using your time well, you're balancing out time, and you're integrating those daily check-ins. Because in the end of the day, if you're not checking in with people, you are not going to see that success. And again, that's our primary responsibility as leaders. We lead a workforce of people who every single day are dealing with, lots of challenges, not just the clinical challenges, of making sure people are getting good care and we're not causing harm, but also all the other challenges, which is the stuff that's happening in the undercurrent, in your healthcare organization, the stuff that's happening when families come in because they're full of frustration and anger and they're really pissed off and annoyed, let alone our patients who are dealing with a whole bunch of things as well. And I will tell you, I want you to know as a leader, part of leadership is this acceptance, is that role and responsibility is so important. It really means that you are operating from a place where every day you are going to feel a bit overloaded and a bit overwhelmed. That comes with the territory because you have to be able to adapt and adjust and reprioritize and do things on the fly, which means that day that you carved out, you had all these plans, might be completely hijacked and derailed, and now you have to do something else and you lost all that time. Listen, there's two ways of adapting to that. Number one is you recognize that that's going to be normal. Okay? Tomorrow's a new day. We simply reprioritize again, we shift, and if we need to, we go and ask for support. And this is a hard one sometimes for leaders, is to go to your boss and say, listen, yesterday didn't go as planned. I have this, this, and this. I'm struggling with prioritizing. Can you help me? What should I be doing? I need your guidance. I need your support. And that leader will be able to tell you, hey, listen, I would work on this. I would see if this thing can go here or this person can help here. Like, we got to get better at doing that instead of carrying the weight of all that on us and allowing that to weigh down ourselves. Because if you've ever been a leader where you've felt like the week ends and you're like, I got nothing done. I literally ran from one thing to the next. Well, that might be a signal that you might need to work a little bit on sort of taking that step back and that step up and looking at things from a higher level and putting a pause and causing an audible, like calling an audible. I will tell you, I say this all the time when I'm educating. Like when I get on a step ladder, like a real ladder, like a 6-foot ladder, and I get up like 2 or 3 steps and I'm like looking out at the world, I'm always like saying to my husband, oh my God, this is what 6 foot looks like. Like it's like looks totally differently than my, 5'3" view. Of course, it looks differently. When you step back and you step up and you look at things at a higher level, you can really start seeing things in a different perspective. And for you, I'm going to challenge you to think, really look and say, what can I do differently? What can I do in terms of my behaviors and my actions where it's going to reinforce trust? And what I love, love, love about this book in The Speed of Trust is Stephen highlights these 13 leadership behaviors that are essential to maintaining trust with your workers. And we're going to talk about them because I think they're so incredibly important. And I'm here to remind you, as a leader, your goal ultimately in your development here in life school as a leader is to get to consistency. And what do I mean by that? I mean, no matter what happens to you, you respond in a similar way each time over and over again. So, if you're in a situation and the people that you're responding to, you have a good relationship with, and you can do that in ease, that's one thing. But if you're responding as a leader and you're responding to somebody that does things that trigger something in you to respond from a place of anger or frustration or getting annoyed, that you recognize that and you say, all right, that's inconsistent. I want to gain consistency here. I want to make sure I'm not getting triggered, right? And I'm responding in the right way every single time. So I love, love, love the work in this book, The Speed of Trust. And I want to talk about those 13 behaviors. So the first behavior that Stephen talks about in his book is our ability as leaders to talk straight. And you know this, if you manage people, boy, they know if you can talk straight to them and give them all the information they need to be able to do their job. They know when someone's withholding information and they're not giving that information. So your ability to talk straight, that is so incredibly important when it comes to trust. Where I've seen people slip in this is particularly around performance issues, right? Is if you've ever been in a conversation with a boss and they're talking to you about something and you leave the conversation and you're like, wait a minute, was somebody trying to tell, what just happened there? Like, was I getting the whole picture? Then you totally understand and know what that means about talking straight. But in the book, and I just want to highlight some of the things that Stephen says in the book, which I think are just so, so incredibly important about our ability to talk straight. He says, number one, we've got to be honest. We've got to have this ability to tell the truth. And we've got to let people know where we stand, right? That goes a long way. People can't guess where you stand on an issue. They need to really be able to know that. And we need to do better at using very simple language. And we need to make sure that we're calling things out what they truly are. And that we're showing integrity in that. And we're not manipulating people. We're not distorting facts. We're not trying to manipulate a situation so that it could look different for somebody else. Again, those are things that we can do every single day when we think about the work that we do as leaders. So our ability to talk straight, that's number one. Number two is our ability to demonstrate respect. And this is a huge one for most leaders. And this is where a lot of mistakes happen, particularly around communication. And I mean verbal and nonverbal. So including like the wrong time to have a conversation, right? We chose poor words or we responded inappropriately through our body language, our face, our gestures, all of it. Part of this work that you've got to do a really good job with in life school is just to practice really noticing the conversation that you're having with a person. And there is nothing wrong with making a mistake. You're a leader. You're not going to land every conversation perfectly. Even when you get to mastery in many of your competencies, there's still going to be days where you're going to make mistakes. That comes with the territory. What a courageous and bold and a trustworthy leader does is they go back to the conversation and they say to the person maybe that next day or the next time they see that person, they seek them out. They don't let them stew, but they go and seek them out and say, hey, listen, do you have a minute? Because I know we had that conversation yesterday and I was up all night thinking about it because it certainly didn't land the way I intended it to. And I was wondering if you felt the same way. And I wanted to call a reset. And I really wanted to take a few minutes out when you're ready to have a conversation again, but to be able to better articulate and share with you what I was trying to get across. It's clear to me that it wasn't a good time, right? Or maybe I used a poor word choice. I did show respect. And respect is such a big one when it comes to the way we interact, especially if you think about our ability as leaders is to make sure we demonstrate really good ability to be culturally competent. That means we recognize we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences in life. And we're not looking at somebody expecting that they conform to what we want them to do, but instead we support either the way they communicate and how can we help them and how can we improve their skills if it's any kind of skill developments needed. But we're really creating the conditions where that person can be their best self, right? That's what really exemplary leadership gets to. And I love in the book the third one, which is all about creating transparency. You know this as a leader. Making sure people get all the information is essential. You can't operate and understand what you need to do if there's not this mechanism where we are fully transparent and we're preparing people and we're explaining things to people. Otherwise, people are going to go to a place where they're going to start creating different conditions for that. So as a leader, I'm going to challenge you to think about, how do you create transparency with people? If you have an issue with an employee and you're not comfortable addressing it, how would that person even know that that's an issue if you're not fully being transparent with them? Listen, I always love in teaching to use this analogy of, we've all been in that situation where we've had something that we've eaten, a meal, let's say it was an everything bagel for breakfast. Right, we scarf it down and we go about our day, and it's nearly time for us to hit the restroom and have lunch again. And we go to the bathroom and we notice in the mirror that we have a poppy seed in the middle of our teeth. And meanwhile, we've talked to 20 people and we're like, nobody said anything to me. And we're like, why didn't people say anything to me? I walked around with this poppy seed in my mouth, right? People didn't say anything because they didn't know how to say it. It's very uncomfortable. Right? A leader has the ability to be completely transparent, but I would challenge you, it's the way we're transparent. And that's what helps to form trust. Does it come from a genuine and authentic place? Or are we doing it from a different place? Another one of Stephen's 13 behaviors is our ability to right wrongs. And listen, I love this one. This one's a hard one for a lot of people. Things are not always going to go as planned. You're going to have the best intentions. You're going to work on your plans. You're going to execute those plans. When things don't go right, we have to right our wrongs. We have to be strong enough and go from a place where we're not defensive, that we say, you know what? I could have done better here in this situation. I could have done better leading you. I could have done better communicating with you. There's a whole lot of things I could have done a lot better. And we got to own that. That's us owning that. And if you can't right your wrongs, then what role modeling are you giving for your team members? Then they're going to hide stuff from you, and they're not going to tell you when things go wrong. And you're going to find it out in a way that you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this was happening. So right your wrongs. Lead by example and show people that it's okay to say that this didn't go as planned, or this was a mistake, or this was an error. And that's completely okay. Use it as a teachable moment. That's the more important thing, to create that psychological safety net so that people can feel like if they have something that goes wrong, that's where they're compelled to go to, is to come to you to share it, because they're not afraid. They're not afraid of how you're going to respond or what you're going to do. Instead, they know that you're going to recognize, all right, something went wrong. Let's learn from it. Let's make sure it never happens again. And the best leaders are ones that use all those wrongs, even for themselves, as teachable moments, to talk about them over and over and over again. Listen, there's so many times as a leader, I had conversations with people that they didn't go as planned, especially when I was learning the art of coaching and all of those skills. Of course, that happened to me. I misread a situation, or in my desire to want to get my point out, I wasn't listening to the person. I was so focused on how am I going to respond to this person and what do I have to say? It was like I was literally not even paying attention to the words that they were saying to me. That's a wrong, right? When people come to us, whether it's patients, their family members, whether it's our staff, we're in that moment engaged, having those conversations, and we're actively listening. I love in the book how Stephen talks about another behavior, characteristic and trait that leaders must have is the ability to show loyalty. You know this. If you've ever worked for somebody that doesn't make you feel like you are valued, again, I just think of how many times I have literally witnessed people in healthcare as leaders say those words, if you don't like it, there's the door, right? Like that ability to create and show that, like, you're doing great work. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I truly value everything that you do every single day. And thank you for showing up, for being present, and for coming back and doing it all over again. And by the way, you're doing the work you were supposed to do, which should make you feel even more fantastic, right? That's our ability as leaders to do that. Stephen also talks about in the book about our ability to deliver results. And I think this one is key. Again, if you've ever worked for a leader that can't get results and doesn't have a track record and isn't able to move the needle or get things to move forward, you understand how difficult and challenging this can be. People that you lead every single day are experiencing day-to-day challenges. I've seen this happen in healthcare settings, right? Like, the equipment doesn't work, right? And it takes forever and a day to get the equipment to work, right? And if you think about all the time somebody is being frustrated because they just want a leader to say, oh, okay, you need a mouse and you don't have that on this workstation? Give me 2 minutes. If I have to go to Staples, I'm going to get you a mouse, right? That shows that you're able to deliver results for the person, that you're taking action. You're not just recording it in a book and it's going somewhere and nobody's doing anything about it. I love in the book how Stephen highlights the leadership trait and behavior of getting better. This is our job as leaders. Listen, there is no handbook out there. It's not like you're birthed out into the workforce and then, you come into leadership and there's a manual and you can just follow it and you don't need any training or education to improve your skills and your competencies. No, it takes a lot of work. But I'm going to tell you, coming from a person that had a really good support system for leadership and development and had an individual development plan where I had specific competencies that I worked towards and they were defined and I understood what I needed to do to get to that level of consistency. It's extraordinary when you can say that the work that you do is going to make a difference, right? We're trying to get better as leaders, and think about this. How does that translate to the work that your staff do? If you're a leader and you're showing them that they can get better, then they role model that they can get better and improve. And that, guess what they then turn around and do? They encourage and inspire the patients that they care for that they can get better. Don't worry. I know that this is full of challenges, but these are the things that you can do to get better. And here in life, it's just about doing it over and over again. I love in the book how Stephen talks about our ability as leaders to confront reality. And when you just think of that term, confront reality, so many times as leaders, we have to really be careful that we're not allowing our own personal assumptions to get into the way of the true reality of what we see. We need to be able to confront the real reality, like what is really happening. I see this so many times in the world that we live in. People say this, and each time I hear it, I get a little bit more like cringeworthy, where I'm like, okay, just breathe it out. But it really drives me crazy when people say, nobody today wants to work. Nobody today wants to work. I mean, think about the broad, sweeping stroke of that statement. Nobody wants to work. Everybody just wants to sit around and do nothing. Well, perhaps we need to confront reality. We need to understand what is it about the work that is getting people frustrated and feeling like they can't do the best work that they can do. And how do we as leaders work together collaboratively to fix those things and to make it better for them? I mean, that's 100% within our power as a leader. We all have the ability to do that. And in this great work that Stephen has, when he's talking about those 13 behaviors, he talks about the importance of leaders clarifying expectations. Listen, you are going to hear me say this pretty much every time I can in any educational setting. The best leaders are those who are very clear with expectations. Not only are they clear with the expectations, they actually do this thing called trust and verify, where they make sure that they say to somebody, now we covered all these things that, we talked about today, right? The things that you're going to do, the things that I'm going to do. Why don't you repeat them back to me so that I can make sure that you heard them in the way that they were designed? That's your chance to understand if someone was really paying attention to you or if they were creating their list for Costco in their head. That's your opportunity to clarify those expectations. Oh, no, we talked about this. What I really meant was this. And, tell me a little bit about what are those things that you can do to meet those expectations. That is so incredibly important. If you're not even taking the time out to make sure people know what's expected of them in the workplace, then absolutely that's where we go first. And that expectation setting leads to the other behavior in the book that Stephen talks about, which is practicing accountability. And for me, I feel like this is the huge one in life school again. Not only with the expectation setting, it's the ownership and accountability piece to all this, right? So how do we practice accountability? Well, as leaders, it starts with us being accountable to ourselves, right? That is 100% in our camp. That's our responsibility. So when things go wrong on our end or things go wrong, we, instead of looking outward, we look inward and we say, okay, where did this go wrong? Like, what could I have done differently? Maybe in making sure there was oversight in something. What's my piece to all this? Because just blaming people in your staff isn't going to fix anything. You need to understand what went wrong, right? So to get to that root cause, make sure you have a good way of doing that and identifying the root cause for failure so that you can fix it and making sure that there are things in place to show oversight. And I think in the book, I think one of the things that I really, really love about practice accountability, he's got it here on page 213. He says in the summary part of this, he says you have to hold yourself accountable first. Then you have to hold others accountable second. You see the difference, right? You first, them second. Take responsibility for your results, whether they're good or bad. Be clear on how you'll communicate, how you're doing, and how others are doing. Don't avoid or shirk responsibility. Don't blame others, and don't point fingers when things go wrong. See, that's where we go as humans, and that's why it makes it so difficult and challenging when it comes to this leadership behavior, because it really is about looking inward and saying, all right, where did we fall amiss? And what is needed on my end? It's very easy to say we have every policy, procedure, training, everything, and that people just didn't use what we have, right? We still have some level of oversight as leaders to make sure that people are doing what they should be doing. And that absolutely is important. I love the 10th leadership behavior, which is all about listening first. Listening first. Listening first. I feel like I need to say that 3 times because I feel like in the world that we live in, we are so incredibly and easily distracted. We've lost the art of listening, like listening with all of our senses and slowing down our pace as leaders and giving people presence. I remember this time where I had a leader when I was new into leadership. And I would come in for my one-on-one meetings, and this person would be on their laptop the entire time, working, looking at their screen, not even like putting down like everything, turning their chair and saying like, do you need anything? Can I help you? And stopping what I was doing. And listen, I'm going to say to you, there are going to be times as a leader, you're going to need to be in a train of thought. Like you might be in a train of thought or trying to get something out and someone comes in and it's very disruptive. Listen, there's nothing wrong with saying to somebody, can you just give me 1 minute just to get these thoughts down on paper? And then you're all my attention, right? That's the appropriate way to respond in those types of situations if that's you. Like if you're going to lose your train of thought, get your thought out, just say that. And then when you're done and you get that thought out, you turn, you shift, you look, and you listen. You're fully present. That's so, so, so important. The 11th behavior is our ability to keep our own commitments because, that's super important. If you're not keeping your commitments, then how can you manage your team and make sure they keep their commitments? It's as simple as that. And then I love how he ends it with the last behavior, which is extending trust. So trust is something that's just not a one and done. It's earned, but it's earned over and over again through our words, our deeds, our actions, our behaviors, and our approach. Right? People, we can gain trust or we can lose trust every single day. So you want to be that leader that keeps extending trust through your words and behaviors, and you do that through consistency. And I'm going to remind you here, again, I wanted to share these 13 behaviors because I think it links so well to kind of building the trust. And you can listen on the previous podcast where we talk about self-trust as a leader and Stephen Covey's great work on that. But I want to reassure you here in Life School, when you develop your leadership competencies, when you create a plan for yourself, when you make sure that you're consistent in your behaviors and the way you're interacting with people through your words and your communication, you're just getting better over and over again. And you're making sure that you're putting mechanisms in place to learn and grow and be the best version of yourself. That is going to be your best opportunity to really keep this workforce fully engaged despite all the challenges and keep them laser focused on doing the work they were designed to do, which is care for human beings in their time of need. And there are going to be days where you're going to have good days, and there are going to be days when you're going to have bad days. But you know what's beautiful about this world is we get to do it all over again, and we get to do it from a place where we get to look inward and say, how can I do it differently that next time or tomorrow? And how do I shake the dust off my feet and start it all over again? Trust me when I tell you, when you're a leader and that is your mindset, that's where you lead from, then you're going to create an entire workforce of people that are doing the exact same thing. Listen, I hope you learned something from this podcast, but more importantly, I hope you take the time out to really search inward. Think about those 13 behaviors and think about those things that you might do differently so that you can be the best version of you in Life School. Listen on a future podcast. Goodbye, everyone.